to kindly receive the token of love. I also request the representatives from Tangkul Yolam Ministry to come on stage and receive the gift. Media team, which is media team from Impact TV, from SKTV, ISTV, TMB, Shanghai Express, Imphal Free Press, Huyen Lampau, Ichel Express, TV. Stand on your feet and so that we can acknowledge each one of you as well. The media team. I request Impact TV. Impact TV.
Dam amakakni tongan ba furupna khunda leitaba adungba kangleipak amakakni hauzik thamlamliba adim jati girls hostel gi ichilinau sinna thamlamliba isai gi mayek hingminna si ekoi hariba simaksu ekoi tongan ba furupta tillabasu tongan ba dharma oirabasu ekoi punna Lekol amatada satminasi, punna lekol amada hingminasi. Hingminasi aikoi. Thagachari, thank you very much. As a continuation of today's program, now I would like to request Oja Sankasar, Indigenous Peoples Forum Manipur, to give welcome address.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to give thanks to our Almighty God for giving us this opportunity and a beautiful day. Today is the day for the Indigenous People Forum Manipur. This is the significant and unique day for the indigenous people of Manipur. As we come and together here from different places and from different sections, my welcome note I have already circulated and I have mentioned there. So let me give a few words as a welcome address. Ladies and gentlemen, I extend a warm welcome to our respected chief guests, guests of honors, special invitees, all the invitees, program officials, and my dear friends who have turned up for this grand occasion for the release of our news bulletin from Indigenous People Forum Manipur. At the outset, I would like to bring to your kind notice that if and when the present political leadership and upcoming generation of youths failed to learn the significance of indigenous groups of people, very soon the native people will lose its prominent and relegate to minority status. Today we have seen the Tripura. The indigenous people becomes a victims, becomes a minority. It was due to the lack of statesmanship and vision by the bygone leadership that we are facing a host of challenges today. With a brave heart, I want to caution the present trend of leadership to work with vision for posterity. If today's leadership fail to act and address the imbroglio of illegal immigrants, we will be landed in a more complicated situation. Today, Manipur state has facing a lot of problems, and the conflict is, since last 2 years, because of all these illegal immigrants and the other issues. So I call upon the present political leadership, youths, academicians, and intellectuals to rise up together and set things right. If not, we will soon become a minority groups of people in our own state, in our need to ponder seriously over this issue, and the leaders need to feel the pulse of the people and act accordingly. A true leader must have a vision for the next 100 years and move ahead with long-term policy and blueprint for the future of the native people, with the full contribution of all sections of indigenous people of Manipur. The Indigenous Peoples Forum Manipur has been working ceaselessly and tirelessly for the common cause of all indigenous communities living in the Northeast to create a ministry in the government of India, especially for the well-being and welfare of the, and we will have cultural exchange program also. So for this coming World Indigenous Day, I would like to request each and every one of you to kindly uphold in your prayer for grand success. Political will later show social economic culture the mangba horabanena. Akoina political kana laudana later show. Masagi social economic sina akoy overtake tausalakre. Masi Imphal manungda dum example. Heart of the city. You please go and see. All the shop owners, merchants, Mahajan, rich people, they are enjoying in our own state. And our indigenous people live in the countryside, in the poverty line. Now the indigenous people becomes a beggar, and all the outsiders become an owner of this land. Si muna masig ako'y nanga aiga, maite panggal ka, maite ga tangkul nagaga, adu adahay na, yana de adu ada, murung suna ringay da. Karamba jati karamba mina, ako'y da occupy to sa ligay hay base, masi ako'y kande abas. Sida niya ba ako'y nagkanga da base? Ado na, nga si Indigenous People Forum na, last kana taglagalay, Manipur da Assembly da, Indigenous People, Manipur Indigenous People ki bill ama putok lay hayraga, tung koy na indigenous people sing say shock na social, economic, culture, politically shock na ay koy tung koy na thambaya ba assembly da pass tawraga madu ngaklaga thamgada bani haibase ay koy na several times ay koy strike tawraga lae project convince tawraga MLA sing politicians sing khara phap ta ba hore adugi tamakta ngasi Indigenous People Forum na kana role lori aiga nanga maga adugi issue laina badu di temporary nin laina rambaya leram sunu. That is the different agenda, that is the different issue things, that is the different things, that is the different issue. But we must be known what is our core issue. Kunbasingda paisa pira mo adu pira mo haina loina niraga hingba khakta ne pibang nabada kari tawe as aigi lamsi loro aigi adu loro haiba hawra khreaba. So this is one of the factor. Aduna, ako'y Indigenous People Forum na honori bade Manipur Indigenous People ki bill ama assembly the pass tore haraga tung koina akhoi indigenous yelhomi singse na outsider na la rasu amana la rasu madugi rule du da madu the cross to ngamda ningai overtake to ngamda ningai madu akhoi sem sadana leiri adana akhoi oji release to da adum khangani akhoi gi magazine da akhoi gi activities khara mamang da akhoi khara phong khare to khare ojik na sumaina aduna akhoi di yamna lawroi yamna ngang adu ada su toroi akhoi thabak oina tawra tamna tam tawraga public dai digi no haibase akhoi sarkar na lepak na government na leiriba youth sing da phajana policy ama semle haraga sembire haraga matam mafam chana thambi da bagini akhoi masi tumthopa ngamdri phawbadi akhoi chawthokningai harauningai nokningai karsu leite so adugi tamakta iche sing ima sing oja sing mayam da ina hainingbadi akhoi na tawgadabado madu chumde madu phate haibadu nate isana isa karmaina thabak suraga farm tawraga ok loiraga yen loiraga ai karmaina senthok tawraga mingonda depend tawdadana hingsira haibigi wakhalomda lepa tawba ngamba kanda Panthopide adu tawde aidana waro biba tawgunu ore ko loisan bada akoi gi amu introduction na batam chapa leiradi adum chithal Manipur ama se happy tamata indigenous people forum na sekupa chamlaba akoi gi news bulletin release program da mayam ko invite tawjabani mayam na haraw na lapi bagi tamam amu indigenous people forum Manipur mai ke degi amu ikai thunda ko uchari mayam so haraw ba nungai se ko tawjabani thank you.
Thagachari Uza Sankasar, Yamnamari Chumbawaro, Yama Pandiramni. Ekui Indigenous Peoples Forum na Ngasi Pauda, Kui Manipur City, Tongan ba Indigenous People Singidamata. Lakhali ba Tongan ba initiative sing sida, Kui Kanglo Puruk Naidana, Amadama support Audana. Ekui Yelhomi, Hena Kumang Jansen Bagamba, Adugulaba Landa Mama Odinashi, Hagawaro, Amkahanan Punjage. And now, as the continuations of today's program, now we have come to the moment of news bulletin release. To release news bulletin, I would like to request Chief Guest of today's function, Dr. T.D. Jamir, Nagaland Indigenous People Forum, and Ipfm, to release news bulletin. Sir, please.
I, Dr. T.D. Jamir, President of NIPF, today on the 15th May 2025, released the news bulletin of Indigenous People Forum of Manipur.
Thank you very much, sir. And sir, please kindly give the speech regarding today's function.
Respected anchor, my dear friend Sri Kasam, and all the esteemed, dignified dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, and my young dear friends. Today is unique in the history of Indigenous Peoples Forum of Manipur. We are releasing the news bulletin. Today in this world, media is very important. And this informative system is very important for all the walks of life in people's life. I bring greetings in the name of Nagaland Indigenous People Forum. We are a chapter of Northeast Indigenous People Forum. Our office is based in Guwahati, and our chairman, Mr. Anup Chedia, General Secretary Imphal sends greetings. Our General Secretary also is Mr. Ipfm from Manipur. He also sends greetings. And my colleagues, especially from Nagaland chapter, we are so happy and honored today to be in your midst to share this wonderful occasion with you. Some of the highlights of NIBF I want to emphasize. Last year, in the month of February, we called a symposium of all the CSOs in Nagaland and neighboring states, and some of the representatives from abroad also for FMR. We had a wonderful symposium, and we wrote joint memorandum to President of India, Prime Minister of India, Home Minister of India, and all the governors and chief ministers of Northeast India who are affected by FMR to do away with FMR. We were fortunate to be invited by Zoro organization to Aizol. We met all the displaced politicians from Myanmar. We had a very fruitful interaction with all these people. And there also we had press conference in Aizol Press Club. And we released memorandum again to all these same dignitaries which I mentioned. Today, if you look the scenario of Northeast, all the states are plagued by a single problem. What is the problem? The single problem is migration of integration of illegal immigrants, or we call it IBI. Our dear sister, state Tripura, is completely finished. The local indigenous people are hardly 30%. The illegal migrants have become the masters about the indigenous people. This state of Assam also is very clean. There are total influx of illegal immigrants, taking away all the business, economic status, political status from the indigenous people. We need to be aware of this. In 2007, I'm an outright from Nagaland, and my district Mokokchung. It's a beautiful district. The young people rose against the illegal immigrants. We call it, it was called the Survival 2007. We drove away all the illegal immigrants, even if they are married with a local woman. The children, we drove away. And it was a great success. The business were taken over by the local people. The local people were so happy that there was no menace of these illegal immigrants. Last year, United Nations Indigenous Day at Itanagar, I had the privilege to speak there and privilege to meet all the indigenous leaders. Arunachal also is very clean today. In Arunachal, I saw most of the shops, butchers, all manned by illegal immigrants, marrying the local ladies, taking the surname of the local indigenous people. It's very clean. The Chakmas from Bangladesh, nearing about 50,000, they are settled down in Arunachal. They are demanding their voting rights. When these 40,000 Chakmas get the voting rights, where will our indigenous people go? Where will we have our rights? We will be dominated by these illegal immigrants. I see a green state even in our Manipur state. We are facing the same problem. We indigenous people from all over the state, you have to stand together. You have to block this cancerous element that is coming and prevailing in the state. We have to think about our future, especially for our children, the youth of tomorrow. Our days are getting over. But we have to think about our children, how they will survive in this situation in the days to come. I had the privilege to go to Manila last year, Philippines. I spent my Christmas and New Year, but my main intention was to meet one of the most prominent indigenous people, the Ikurut people. They live, especially from the state of Manipur. We have more than 27, 28 indigenous people residing in this state. Don't let this cancerous element take over you. If we stand united, nobody can touch, nobody can break. There is a story, very simple, as of famous story, but very touching story. In a family, 5 boys, children were always fighting, and the father was dying. So father called all the children, bring 5 sticks. He told them to bind the stick and ask each and every one of them to try to break the bundle. Nobody could break the bundle. Then he asked the eldest son, open the bundles, divide each one stick to each of you. Say, with the leadership of Mr. Asankasar, give him the support, give him the wisdom, so that he endures the best for our indigenous people. Thank you, and God bless everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. T. Lima Jabil, Nagaland Indigenous People Forum, Ipfm, for your wonderful speech. In between, Marathana, Kwigi, Asigi Indigenous Peoples Forum na Sinjaribat Forum Asida, King Labus Forum na Sinjaribat Forum Asida, King Labusu King na Saru Yabina Bukidamakta, Limbira Riba, Kwigi. Kokomigi coordinator Kwegoja Horizon Matoba Amtang Lepkat Pinabaling Shinjage ꯇꯤꯟꯕꯤꯔꯤꯕ ꯈ꯭ꯋꯥꯏ ꯄꯨꯝꯅꯃꯛꯅ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯊꯧꯕꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯑꯃꯨꯛꯇꯪ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯍꯧꯕ ꯈꯨꯕꯥꯛ ꯊꯥꯅꯁꯤ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯆꯔꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯊꯧꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯗꯣꯛꯇꯔ ꯑꯦꯗꯚꯣꯀꯦꯠ ꯔꯕꯤ ꯈꯥꯟ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯔꯕꯤ ꯈꯥꯟꯕꯨꯁꯨ ꯑꯃꯨꯛꯇꯪ ꯂꯦꯞꯈꯠꯄꯤꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯔꯕꯤ ꯈꯥꯟꯕꯨꯁꯨ ꯈꯔ उच्चगे कोई इमानी मैरागी कोई रिप्रेजेंटेटिव कोई आरके ओबी सुनीता देवी अमदी एस प्रेमावती यानी अंतम लेखक पीतुना मियामना इकाई खंडबोतियु थगचरी इसा अचन बमतम खर खजितम काइथोक पीदुना मसीगी थौरम असिबु मपों आन बिगनी हाजगी वाखलोंदा लेंबिरक्पगिदमक्ता हन्ना Indigenous Peoples Forum gi maikaiदगी तेनबिरिबा फाइ पुनमक अमदि लेंबिरक्लिबा पुनमकपु हन्ना थागतपा फोंदोकचरी And now I would like to request Dr. Arambam Noni, Associate Professor, DM University, Imphal, kindly to give a speech regarding today's function.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I congratulate our college friend, Asanka sir, and his team, Indigenous Peoples Forum Manipur. I extend my warm regards and welcome to Dr. T. Lima for having participated in this very significant event. I shall not take much time. I also extend my wishes and respect to all the audience and members on the dais. I think we are in a very significant moment as far as Indigenous peoples are concerned, because we are increasingly trapped in conflicts which is mostly infighting in some sense. On the other hand, coming together of Indigenous people is a hope to sustain our future. And therefore, if you go by the definition of UN UNBRIC, we call it UNBRIC 2007, it says that the Indigenous people shall have the autonomy, the right to self-determination, and which it calls as something like free, prior informed consent as far as resources or political decisions are concerned. I don't have much time today because it's a very big function and a lot of people probably will speak. I'll speak for about 5 minutes. I just want to flag off by saying that coming together of Indigenous people is a very good hope because it can bring peace and conflict resolution, number one. Number two, Indigenous peoples should begin to rethink and resolve and come out of the increasing infighting and lack of confidence, trust building amongst them. Because Indigenous people have common issues as far as ecology is concerned, as far as resources are concerned, as far as demography is concerned, and even political representation and sharing of power with what I call union government. I want to draw your attention to one very important event which talks about the autonomy question of the Indigenous peoples. As we all know, in the presence of Dr. T. Lima, I would like to flag up this question. In 2010, the Assembly of the Nagaland State passed a law to use and govern the oil and petroleum resources available in the state of Nagaland. Under the powers given in Article 371C, this was a power acquired by the people of Nagaland through the special laws like Article 371A. However, this constitutional provision of the Indian state was not allowed to be exercised by the Nagaland state because it was termed, quote unquote, by the Union government as an unconstitutional move by the Legislative Assembly of the Nagaland state. Therefore, the issue of accessing our own resources or our minerals, for instance, is actually being deprived. And it is against the spirit of the UNCLOS 2007 as we have been talking about. Therefore, 80% of the global conflicts are located in the areas where indigenous peoples are inhabiting, and more importantly, these 80% conflicts regions are biodiversity hotspots. There are so many issues we can talk about. A couple of issues are important. The indigenous peoples must come to a point where they negotiate their differences, number one, so that the forces which are external to the indigenous idea and indigenous worldview may not be able to further segregate people or the indigenous peoples. As I've been talking about these from the very beginning of today's talk, that indigenous people have been apparently living in a situation of infighting kind of situation, which has actually derailed their political and economic projects, for instance. On the other side, if you go by the definition of people like Martin Bobo, who was one of the pioneers who worked on the idea of indigenous people, he gives a very interesting definition of indigenous people, because we all sitting in this room would be finally struggling who are actually the indigenous peoples. One very important clue that we can get from him is that he says people who are there before any sort of invasion, or people who were there before the colonial power came in, those people who were attached to land and territory and cultural distinctiveness would be considered as indigenous people. So this definition given by Martin Cooper looks very, very suitable for the people, for the indigenous people of the Northeast, because they are pre-colonial people. They are people who actually lived before invasions by the outsiders. So they have been living in this region for thousands of years, and their attachment to land and resources is very rightful and very, very significant historically. Towards the end, what I would like to say is that indigenous people should also be careful about excessive use of their identity as a political tool, because when we shrink our indigeneity, or when we collapse our indigeneity to segmented identity politics, then the possibility of having alliances amongst the indigenous people gets disturbed. What we see in the state of Manipur and even in the Northeast is similarly like overuses of ethnic identities as a ground for doing politics, whereby indigenous people gets easily divided and segmented. In such a scenario of weaponizing identity for myopic political projects, the indigenous peoples remains disunited. And therefore, when we celebrate our identity and culture, we need to also understand the dangers of politicizing these identities, because at the end of the day, when you start politicizing specific identities for particular political projects, you seem to have lost the ground to live and coexist and negotiate with the existing identities around. So the indigenous people, when they are doing their politics of identity and culture, they should also invent mechanisms to survive and coexist with the existing political identities around. In that way, probably we can bring peace, understanding, and it was rightly pointed in the concept note that we as a community can come together, we as a community can survive when we are united. And therefore, we need to pay a lot of respect and sensibility to the coexisting communities and their historical aspirations, but at the same time, indigenous people should learn to renegotiate their identity politics with the communities and identities coexisting. With these words, I again wish Indigenous Peoples Forum, Manipur, for having consistently worked on the questions of indigenous people, and it is a great great news that a news bulletin has been published, and these kind of documentation of the voices of the indigenous people should remain very, very important, and it probably will put our people's indigenous movement at the global scale and global map of indigenous movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noni Arambam, for such an eye-opening speech. Thank you very much once again. And now we have come to the moment to hand over certificate to those in recognition and exceptional and outstanding achievement and contribution in the fields of writing and journalism. So I would like to request Hong Fro Simri to come up on the stage and receive your award. Certificate of commendation. This certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Reverend Mr. Hong Fro Simri in recognition of your exceptional and outstanding achievement and contribution in the fields of writings and journalism. Your invaluable writings enlighten and inspire thousand souls. Given on the day of Ipfm News Bulletin Release Program 15 May 2025 at Sangai Hall, Imphal, Hotel. Thank you. Next, I would like to call upon Diffu Prinmai to come up on the stage and receive your certificates. Mr. Diffu Prinmai. Thank you very much. And now, I would like to request Dr. Arambam Noni. Next, Ngatami Humyo to come up on the stage and receive your certificates.
On behalf of MNOID,
Thank you very much. Thoronasi Makhaja Pizaroina, Nasi Thoronasibo, Mapung Pahan Begini, Hybri Wakalonda, Lengbi Ragliba, Pigi, Babung, Kai Kunabadamatik Jaraba, Arke Megenbu, Dai Sakta, Kopachege, Thoronasi Gamari Lena, Waro Karakachitang, Babung, Tambinanaba, Pamung, Lenkat Piroxi.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you, particularly when Dr. T. Lima Samir is the chief guest, the president of the Nagaland Indigenous Peoples Forum, and the dignitaries. my testing, Dr. Zamir has sent a very powerful and meaningful message to all of us about the necessity of indigenous people's unity in the entire region. At the same time, Professor Noni also has mentioned about the necessity to look beyond indigenous boundaries. I mean, for coexistence. These are both significant and compulsions of our historical situation we live today. I will be very brief and short. My message is the indigenous peoples of the so-called northeastern region, which I would prefer to be termed as Western Southeast Asia, is that for survival against all odds, pressures, and internal as well as external pressures, particularly external pressures, the illegal immigrants, illegal migration, demographic pressure is huge. And we all know the case of Tripura, which is happening in Assam now, and Manipur as well. This is the time that indigenous peoples of the entire region unite together for survival. Because interdependent coexistence is the only way for our survival, for the future generations yet to be born in this region. So interdependent coexistence is not an option, it is a historical necessity. This historical necessity compels the entire indigenous people of this region to transcend indigenous boundaries so that we can become a greater, we can all merge together a bigger and greater identity while retaining our respective indigenous identities. And I'm sure that this is the future course of history that is going to unfold in this part of the world. The world is very small now, and our region is very, very small. But in this small region, big things are happening now, internally and externally. But it is right time, and of course, most imperative that we give more emphasis on inclusive outlook, leaving behind our exclusive ideas and outlooks. So my appeal to all of you is, let us indigenous people be indigenous people. But indigenous people needs to look beyond indigenous identities so that we all together can live in interdependent coexistence. Thank you very much. Once again, thank Dr. T. Zamir for your kind assisting presence here, and we look forward to you to meeting you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pabung, again for your wonderful speech. So now, I would like to request Kurajam Atoba, the coordinator Kokomi, to come up on the stage. We would like to acknowledge you and honor you with a token of respect. Thank you very much. Kwigi, imagi mairagi, ekwigi G&E lengbirakhiba tugi maraktagi. Ama hekta ekwigi se saktang lengkat piraktuna kwigi Indigenous Peoples Forum gi maikai dagi. Ikai khonabam tang uchabagi tanja de lozage. Lengkat piraksi. Thank you very much. And now, I would like to request Ms. Kaying Kasar to give vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and fellow participants. As we conclude this significant program of Indigenous People Forum Manipur, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who has contributed to the success of this event. To our chief guest, Dr. T. Lima Jamir, President of the Nagaland Indigenous Peoples Forum, who come all the way from the Nagaland to attend this very event. We are truly honored by your presence and your valuable contribution to this event. Thank you for your thoughtful words that has inspired us. To our guest of honor, Dr. Arambang Noni, Associate Professor at DM University Imphal, your warm presence has lent gravitas to this occasion. We are grateful for your time, expertise, and management. Special gratitude is owed to our functional President Asham Kasar, President of the Indigenous Peoples Forum Manipur, for your tireless efforts and unwavering commitment to our shared mission. Your leadership has been instrumental in bringing us to this milestone. Loina na ako'y special invitees oibiriba ikai khunaraba mingo oina panjarabada RK Vijaya Lakshmi, Secretary of Yelhomi Puru, loina na Assurance Raitan, President of All Manipur Tribal Film Organization, Oza Gurukung Makusu Thauram asi mapung pana bagidamak lingsin birakpa amasung sarug yabina bagidamak thagachaba pongdokcher. Thank you for accepting our invitation and for being here with us today. To our fellow participants and attendees, to the scholars from MU, and also to the media team. Thank you for being an integral part of this program. Your presence, engagement, and collective efforts have made this event a success. We are grateful for your involvement. Once again, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to be with us today. Let us carry forward the spirit of this occasion and continue to work together towards a brighter future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have come to an end of today's program, and thank you very much everyone for your support and bearing with us. Thank you very much once again, and I would like to request everyone that we will check out group photographs. Thank you. Manipuri mana yaipare. Okay. Lingbi lagi bawah pun